Hi, welcome to SUSECON Digital 20. I'm Raj Meal, Product Marketing Manager for SUSE Linux Enterprise. And today I'll share with you the Multimodal OS platform, which is SUSE Linux Enterprise platform. And we'll discuss how to simultaneously support the legacy applications while you're also supporting modern workloads. So let's get started. The world around us is changing a lot by the applications that we use, and they get deployed in the data centers all across the world. We're taking one example here, artificial intelligence, which is having a big impact on what kind of infrastructure that gets put in those data centers to satisfy those applications. And this is just one stats where you see within less than 3 years, the AI deployments in data centers will go from 4% to almost 50%, which is that half the data centers in the world will have AI deployments of some kind. And that drives requirements all across the board. What kind of infrastructure would be required in those data centers to support the different type of AI applications, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's an oil rig, which is trying to do an AI ML, or an autonomous vehicle that's generating lots of data. Spending on digital transformation is increasing a lot. It's increasing in double digits. And these numbers are huge. What that means is impacting pretty much all the organizations that are involved in that with some kind of IT. And 90% of all new applications will have some kind of microservices architecture. So what does that mean? That means that most of these applications will be bite-sized and will be modular. And 35% of all production apps would be cloud native. So there would be some kind of a cloud component in the applications which will be in production. And all this indicates a wave of digital transformation. Workloads will change dramatically, and 50% of the data will be outside of data centers or cloud in less than 3 years. Again, that shows you how the infrastructure needs to change to adapt to that kind of a scenario where the data is not in the traditional data centers. And the good news is 2/3 of the CIO, which is like 66%, most of the CIOs are investing in modernization. So that means we are aware we are taking the right steps. But on the flip side, if the organizations which are slow in adapting the transformation wave or get left behind, or who are just missing it, either they don't have the resources or they don't have the awareness. Now, 70% of those organizations may not survive because of those because of their product and service models that don't fit the IT transformation. Now, that's a cause of concern, right? But that's an important piece of data too. Now, let's dig a little deeper into that aspect. As we are undertaking the digital transformation, there is a digital divide that's happening. And IDC did this study a few years ago. They took manufacturers who were involved in digital transformation, and also they studied manufacturers which were not involved in digital transformation. And there was a stark difference. The manufacturers who were digital, who embrace the digital transformation, and they're calling them digital determined, which is a good way to put it, they experienced profit growth. And on the flip side, the manufacturers who were not able to embrace digital transformation actually had a loss. So it's not now just a matter of whether you will have an extra profit or you'll grow a little bit more. It's more of if you do not participate in the transformation at the right time, at the right pace, then you may actually have a detrimental effect to the business. It could lead to competitive disadvantage, or it could lead to losses. And as you know, right now, we are having a huge impact because of the COVID. And you can see that transformation impact where some of the organizations are just leapfrogging that competition, and some of the organizations are struggling, and others actually could be falling behind. So now we'll look at three companies, different type in different industries, and we'll see how they try to do IT transformation, because it is challenging. An energy company, which is a SUSE customer, their business strategy involves acquisitions. So in order to grow, they want to embrace digital transformation and to deliver the services that they need to deliver to their customer. They typically do acquisitions, and during this journey of acquisitions and doing transformation, they experience the typical growth challenges. It is complex. There are different systems. The company that is getting acquired may have totally different systems, and how do they integrate and stuff and things like that. Overall transformation is costly. You may want to change systems. You may want to add different type of software to it, or in some cases, actually, you may actually just have to completely throw away the systems. So in their case, they wanted to keep their current infrastructure and add to it. And so basically, they don't want to rip and replace, but maximize investment they had in the infrastructure, which is totally fine. And that's one of the components, that's one of the design aspects of the SUSE Linux Enterprise that we'll take a look at, where you can transform without rip and replace. Here's another company. They are in pharmaceuticals, and they wanted to, they were started with Amazon Web Services as their cloud provider. As Amazon entered healthcare, actually, now their cloud provider has become a competitor. So now they are faced with the choice of, okay, what do? We have to embrace another cloud. But overall, every company is not the base. They may not have the right technology skills to understand, okay, what do we want to do here? Many companies, even though they want to have the right technology, they may not have either the resources or the time to understand what all different components are involved in that cloud journey or in the cloud implementation. So in their case, they were wondering, okay, what do? We have this gap in understanding of cloud technology. We need to figure out whether the architecture should be on-prem, whether it should have one cloud or two clouds. We definitely want to go away from Amazon, but we don't want to give them up. We want to have a dual vendor strategy, or at some point of time, maybe we want to give them up, but we definitely want a multi-cloud. And the lesson learned here was they don't want to get locked into a vendor. And that is a common theme too, whether it's coming from an OS perspective, you don't want to get vendor locked into a particular OS vendor, or you don't want to get vendor locked in with the cloud provider that you're using. And in this case, the cloud provider that you choose to work, that cloud provider is best suited to fill that gap in cloud technology skills that you may not have. And this is totally fine, but it's understanding of the fact that the vendor should be able to provide that information to you. So so they can complement what you're lacking, and you can get to the position of implementing applications beyond the stage of just implementing the hybrid cloud. Now here's a third example where this is about the hybrid IT infrastructure. So Lot Airlines, they wanted, as they grow the business, their infrastructure was just growing all over the place. They had Red Hat as a Linux system, and then the different architectures and such. And your hybrid IT infrastructure can take various forms. It can have different kind of Linux systems or different kind of hardware systems. And at the end of the day, as you're growing, you want to be able to manage this whole hybrid infrastructure estate that you have. So in their case, they wanted to manage these multiple Linux distributions and from a common console. So when they chose SUSE Linux Enterprise, they were able to keep their Red Hat Enterprise Linux, but add to it, with SUSE Linux Enterprise. So now they can manage both the type of Linux distribution. So now their administrators don't have to worry about whether they can how do they manage the workloads on different type of systems. And when there's a need to call to support, they don't have to worry about which vendor to call. They can just call SUSE, and that way they have one phone call to pick and get the job done for that aspect. Now, this is where we come to the definition of multimodal IT. So IT transformation has challenges. You want to embrace IT transformation. And this leads to multimodal IT. So what do we mean by the word multimodal? It means different modes. Mode one is traditional data centers. This is where your ERP systems are there, your databases are there. Mode two is agile systems using microservice architectures. They could be container-based. And then everything in between. That's where the multi-modes come in. So mode one, mode two, and everything in between, that's a combination of the modes. Now, many organizations don't have one mode or the other. They have this combination of multiple modes, and that's what they get into the situation of multimodal, where they're supporting a data center, but also have needs to support new applications, smartphone-based applications, which are based on microservices, bite-sized, and use containers. And this kind of an architecture, this kind of a scenario now would require a multimodal platform. So all your infrastructure needs are satisfied. The platform should be able to support your traditional databases, traditional infrastructure, and also should be able to support your mode 2 type of applications in that infrastructure. And in the scenario of the multimodal IT, you do not want to rip and replace. You want to be able to bridge the needs. So if you have a monolithic database and you want to have the workloads which could go either be in cloud or on your on-prem servers, you should be able to move across. And because you want to preserve your investment and also have that portability in the applications that you need. And that's where the maximum benefit comes out. Another example of having a bridge is you have a data center, and let's say you're a financial company, and over time you move from HTML-based applications to now microservices-based applications, which are based on smartphones, which are sitting on your smartphones. Now they get updated almost continuously, so it requires the infrastructure of transactional updates. Whereas your data center, where you have the ERP systems or your databases, those systems do not get updated that fast. They're highly reliable systems, and so you need different kind of needs for different kind of architecture for those systems. Ideally, your new application should be able to talk to your data center, and that's when you get the maximum benefit out of your existing infrastructure. We're adding to your existing traditional data center legacy infrastructure and getting the best out of both. Now let's look at some of the requirements that get driven because of these needs of the application, whether from traditional or software defined. On the traditional infrastructure side, you would have one big box which serves multiple use cases. On the software defined side, you would have single use case purpose-built machines. So for example, or infrastructures where you're doing just containers or just virtual machines, and then you have thousands and thousands of them. So in the software-defined world, your upgrades are faster. The transactional, your systems are always up to date. Whereas on the traditional side, you don't upgrade maybe in a quarter, maybe in 6 months, maybe sometimes in a year or more, because that's the requirement of those systems. So underlying OS platform should be able to support both those scenarios. And once you do that, then your system admins don't have to worry what platform is underlying, and they can just worry on how to manage it, what are the workloads they can run, and just move them transparently from one place to another. Now, SUSE Linux Enterprise is a multimodal OS platform, and as you can, this is one way to represent it, where all the other components or architecture components are leveraging that multimodal aspect of SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. So whether you're managing using SUSE Manager, or you're running compute with virtual machines or containers, or you're implementing a storage solution, or you're running applications and you're deploying container management platform like SUSECAS platform. And on top of that, you could be running some business analytics. And all that is supported by the OS, because it has it can support your modular applications as well as it can support your monolithic application. So both those mode 1, mode 2, and everything in between. And that becomes a basis of overall architecture. And it also becomes a strategic part that once you have an OS that takes care of your today's needs and is positioned for the future, then you don't have to worry about deploying new type of applications later on, because you know your system, your underlying platform will take care of it. The three key architecture pillars for SUSE Linux Enterprise. The first pillar is around simplification of the multimodal IT. So simplification of the IT infrastructure that you have, the mix of IT infrastructure. The second piece is modernizing your existing traditional infrastructure. So existing infrastructure that you have, how you don't want to rip it and replace it, but you want to modernize it so you can get the best out of it. And the third piece is around how do you innovate maximum using the platform. Now, simplification means that you're bridging your traditional infrastructure with the software defined. So if you have the financial application, you went from your HTML to a smartphone-based app that's still accessing your traditional databases. And those two systems work nicely with each other. The second aspect of simplification is that you're able to break down the silos of hybrid IT. So whether you're running an architect x86 based machine, which is off the shelf, or you're running an IBM Z mainframe. And whether you have a workload on x86 or IBM Z, both should work the same. It should be transparent. If you're fixing a patch on x86, it should be similar to how the same patch should be available from the common code string to if you're running it on IBM Z mainframe. For modernization, you want a modular architecture. So your traditional infrastructure that you have, you should be able to incrementally change it, incrementally add features to it. And that's where the modularity comes into the picture. So as an example, let's say if you want to enable clouds, you just add the cloud module. That way you're able to get the cloud functionality into your on-prem servers. On the innovation side, developers drive the innovation. So majority of the innovation happens in open source. So you want to be able to connect to the community easily and quickly. And once you're comfortable in the community, let's say you started with OpenSUSE Leap, which is an open source component or open source version of the SUSE Linux Enterprise, and you started there, you developed good applications, you got packages from Package Hub, and now you're ready to get to production, and that's where you need support. That's where you may need support, and so you have your production systems properly taken care of. So that transition is easy with SUSE Linux Enterprise, and you will be able to move from OpenSUSE Leap to SUSE Linux Enterprise. And also, from a development perspective, you don't want to worry about where your workloads are running. Whether you develop them on-prem, you should be able to run them on cloud as well, and back and forth. And that's when you can truly innovate. You can just focus on the workloads and not worry about what the architecture is beneath that. Now let's take a look under the hood. How does it actually look like? So the key thing here is common code base. That's what makes it silicon agnostic for all architectures. So from architecture A to Z, from ARM to x86 to IBM Z, the same common code base runs on all architectures. And that makes life very easy for the system administrators. They don't have to worry about what code stream is running where. All the products are based on that. So whether you're running microservices-based SUSE CaaS platform, and there the OS is doing transactional updates for your Kubernetes installation, or you're running SLES for SAP, that system may not get updated for a while. And both those platforms are using common code base. So if you are running Apache on both of them and you get a bug and you get a security vulnerability in the Apache, you would be sure that you'll get the same fix on both their platforms. That is just one example. It just having that common code base enables you to be agnostic to the silicon, also agnostic to which platform, which particular products you're using. So what you're doing by having a common code base and modularity is you're going away from the stack way of building our systems, where you were just making one big monolithic system. Now, having that modularity, having a common code base, really helps you get away from that and support a variety of heterogeneous computing environment. Now, what exactly is common code base? So it's a pool of thousands of packages, and these packages are developed, maintained, and supported consistently. And that's where you get the enterprise-grade quality of the system, overall system. And all the products which are SUSE-based are based out of the common code base. That's where you get the uniform applications. Now, here's a summary of benefits. So you get a unified platform, whether for your bare metal, virtual, or container-based applications. And whatever the type of application that's running, whether it's a container-based or a traditional database application, you don't have to worry about which Linux platform it's supposed to run and how it was done there. Your workloads can move transparently across whether it's VMs or bare metal, right, or cloud. And overall, you get a silicon agnostic computing. So regardless of which architecture you have, today, let's say you have IBM Z, and sometime later you want to add off-the-shelf hardware, and you buy x86 for your new data center or new team in the company. Then that should just work fine based on the architecture for SUSE Linux Enterprise. And that's what your expectation should be from an OS platform, that regardless of what kind of hardware you're choosing, your application should run the same. And that's how you will be able to make optimal applications that leverage your full IT infrastructure. Now let's take a look at the modularity part. So when we say modular plus, what it means is everything is a module. So you can create the full system out of by putting one module at a time. And this is an example of highly available system. So you started with this base system, you added desktop apps, you added server apps module, and then you added high availability extension to it. And then you have this highly available system there. If you want to make it a desktop, you add the desktop module. If you want to add containers, you get the containers module. Or if you want to enable public cloud functionality, then you get the public cloud module. Or if you were to create a SLAS for SAP, then you get the SAP solution module. And that's the whole idea, that you don't plan a year in advance or 2 years in advance in creating an architecture for your systems. You can just start basic on what you need today and then build from there. So that, again, helps you reduce that long design times, planning for a long time, and you can go in a modular fashion, step by step. You can use your existing subscription, that's bring your own subscription if you have on-prem, and then just take it to the cloud. And that just makes it more easy and simpler for you. Again, you don't have to think too much or design your systems way up ahead in time, which is very hard to do in these days when the things change so fast, the technology changes so fast. So you have that flexibility of whether once you have a subscription, you can move it whether on-prem or cloud. And you can choose your cloud. SUSE is pretty much cloud agnostic in terms of all the products that are supported. So you can choose whether it's Azure, AWS, or Google, or Oracle, or any of your other cloud vendors which are supported. Because the idea is not to get stuck with a cloud provider, but to give you the cloud, the multi-cloud or the cloud implementation, so you can focus on your workloads and getting your applications to a point where they're running to the best optimal point. Now, from a community perspective, Package Hub is where all the packages are there. So you would see that there's a big difference from SUSE Linux Enterprise 12 to 15, where this with SUSE Linux Enterprise 15, the gap between the community and the OpenSUSE Leap and the enterprise version has really narrowed down. And you can SUSE Linux Enterprise 15 was released a couple of years ago, and that gap has narrowed with every single year there, where you can get a package like, I'll just pick RabbitMQ. You can take an that's an open source messaging broker app package. You can get it from Package Hub and just use it in your enterprise if you have Sleep. So if you have SUSE Linux Enterprise. If you're in the community, you want to go from OpenSUSE Leap to SUSE Linux Enterprise, you can do that too easily. So that way, both enterprise as well as community benefits from each other. And that's the whole idea, that you get the maximum innovation at an enterprise quality grade, whether you're developing a package or using the full OS. Now, in summary, we have reached the end of our presentation, so I would summarize for you. SUSE Linux Enterprise is the multimodal platform, and the key three things there are: you simplify your IT infrastructure. So whatever type of architecture that you're using, or different types of architecture, whether it's traditional or software defined, you should be able to simplify it. You should be able to manage it simply. You should be able to break the silos there. That's step number one. The second thing is, once then the infrastructure that you have, you should be able to modernize it. You should be able to run modern applications on it. You should be able to make it cloud ready, or be able to run cloud-based applications, or things like that, or add container capabilities to it if you're running containers on it. And when you're ready to scale, that's when you accelerate, right? So you can accelerate either from open source perspective, get the open source modules or packages that you want, integrate them with your system, or you scale out if you're trying to scale out the current systems. So, and that's a virtuous cycle. Once you make that investment in the strategic aspect of it, that you have the right platform, then you can build from there as your business needs grow. So it was my pleasure to introduce Multimodal Platform to you, and thanks for your time, and enjoy the SUSECON Digital 20. Thank you again. Cheers.